Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned in to the 14th Leadership Skills Development Summit of 2021. If you have just joined us, man, it's your loss. You've missed out on quite a bit, but thank you still for coming through, because we still have a jam-packed day with a lot of knowledge sharing and engagements that will be conducted. So we are now going to be entering into our panel discussion, which is the third discussion for the day. We're looking at future-proofing skills. What does that mean? Currently, we've got 63.2% youth between the ages of 15 and 35 that are unemployed. And remember, yesterday we asked, are people truly unemployed, or are they simply unemployable? So we look forward to inferring some of the sentiments and the thoughts that were shared yesterday onto this panel. With me, we have Luvuyo Rani, who's the founder and managing director of Sililo Uluto Technologies. And then we also have Miss Antoinette Oglethorpe, who's the director at Antoinette Oglethorpe. We also have Walter Adeo from Singularity University, the faculty member of Singularity University Africa. We also have Professor Sibusiso Moyo, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Innovation and Engagement at the Durban University of Technology. We are waiting, if not, he'll probably tune in just now, for Dr. Makamba Magaziwe, from the 4IR research expert, and he's a board member at the Eastern Cape Development Corporation. I mean, we have serious people here. So I don't know about you, but I'm truly looking forward to what they have to say as we discuss this theme. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us on this discussion. I think it is so necessary. We are past the matrix of crisis in this country. Earlier, I just mentioned that we are sitting at 63.2%, percentage of unemployment that is beyond crisis. South Africa is actually, I think, the second highest in the world, if I'm not mistaken, based on some global index around employability. And I think it was done by the United Nations Agency. So against that backdrop, may I then ask Mr. Luvuyo Rani, to introduce yourself, and then we'll have Antoinette and Walter, followed by Professor Sibusiso Moyo.
Thanks so much, Tabanka. I mean, it's an honor for invited to be part of the session. And my name is Luvuyo Rani, and I'm a founder of Sililo Uluto Technologies, which is like one-stop IT center that we have in the rural and the township areas in South Africa. So we've got probably about 46 centers across 3 provinces. Wow. Where we train in a year 5,000 young people finding employment, study further. So we train them basic skills like coding, computer skills, digital skills, financial skills, soft skills now. So it's just part of what we look at with training. And most of young people are matriculants who pass grade 12, who are not able to go to university based on the finance, but because of their sitting, they're looking for something. And also because of we bring this center closer where they are. So that from a traveling point of view, they can able to find the centers, and then that makes them able to find employment. I think it's kind of a model that we think it's kind of needed in Africa, in many areas where people can walk in and get part of the digital skills. And that's what we do. And that's what probably we've been doing. And that's what we see there's much more opportunity in terms of bringing education closer to people where they are.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. We look forward to engaging on some of the thoughts that you have just relayed. Thank you. Antoinette?
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. My name's Antoinette Oglethorpe. I run a training and coaching company, and we specialize in career management and mentoring. We're particularly known for our programs which help managers develop the skills to have meaningful conversations with their employees about their progression and development, but also upskilling employees to take ownership for their career development. So we typically do work with people who are already employed and their organisations to help them progress within organizations. We work with a lot of international organizations like the United Nations Development Programme and the World Health Organization. And I think some of the challenges that I see in this world of uncertainty and rapid change that we're in are three challenges that people, employees or non-employees actually, have to address are firstly around mindset. I think historically there was a view that career development was all about getting a job and then progressing in an organization. And that world doesn't really exist the way it used to 20, 30 years ago. And I'm not entirely sure why the mindset hasn't changed, but I still see lots of people who are looking for a career path to be laid out for them. And those career paths don't exist the way they used to because organizations don't exist the way they used to. Everything is changing. The last 12 months, 14 months, 15 months has shown us that, how rapidly everything has changed, and we have to adapt and respond to that. So I think firstly, people need to understand that. They need to understand that the world of work is different, and therefore, as they have changed, they need to change too. And that means they need different skills. Probably the number one is around adaptability. The great thing is that we have all shown we have adaptability over the last 15 months. We haven't had any choice. So we've had to adapt to our new ways of working or our new ways of living. So it's about harnessing that and making the most of that and recognizing that we do have resilience, but actually making that mindful and purposeful. And then the final thing is about behaviors, actually putting all that into action. The number one behavior that people need for owning and developing their careers is influencing others, because we actually cannot develop our careers in isolation. It is all down to creating and taking opportunities that others are able to partner with us or provide for us. And that means we need to influence others. So those are the areas that I'm keen to help people with and help people understand so that they can take that ownership. Because we either spend too long at work to be unhappy, if we're lucky to be in work, or we spend too long wishing we were in work to be even more unhappy. And we need to improve our own satisfaction in order to help the satisfaction of others and create a world of decent work and economic empowerment. So I look forward to meeting and hearing from everybody else. Thank you.
Sure, we can actually even just close shop. I mean, you've said a mouthful. I'm just thinking, wow. Thank you, Antoinette. You've actually just set the standard of how we can, what kind of questions we can actually interrogate further. So thank you for that. Mr. Walter Adeo.
Thank you very much for allowing me to provide some insights and also to be part of this very important conversation. So very, as a quick introduction to your audience, as you mentioned, I'm with Singularity University, and my focus specifically there is on the future of work and jobs, which I think is a very important conversation in the transition that our economies are going through worldwide as we modernize into this digital economy. I'm also a professor of practice at the Johannesburg Business School, and then in my professional capacity, I'm with an organization called Cadena Growth Partners, where we work with organizations to modernize their businesses. And an element of that is also working with startups to help them scale rapidly and partner with corporates. So the good fortune that I have is that I see both the theoretical conversations that we need to have and the theoretical inputs, but also the practical way in which it gets rolled out inside organizations and touches the entrepreneur. So a couple of things that I want to share with you. First of all, is that work and skills and job creation is a monstrously complex and multidimensional conversation. And 5 people will have 5 different opinions. And so I tend to try link skills to rapid job creation. I tend to be a little bit more optimistic about the future, on the assumption that we are structured, organized, and orchestrated as to how we transform our businesses and our economy. And you mentioned some statistics. The World Economic Forum has indicated that if we are well planned in terms of how we transition workforces, for every job we lose as a result of this new economy we enter, we'll create 1.74 new jobs. So jobs that we don't have at the moment, and also due to the expansion of our economy. And then there's economists like Enrico Morietti that highlighted that for every job we create in this digital economy, we have the chance of creating an additional 5 service-orientated jobs. So there's a snowball effect that comes from it. In terms of skill development, we've got to think of the workforce, both blue and white collar. They've got to transition, and they've got to modernize, and they've got to remain relevant. And I think we need to remind ourselves, it's not technology that's eliminating jobs. It's the negative attributes of those jobs that are destroying themselves. Technology just gives us a path to find alternatives. So it's jobs with high risk, low quality, etc. So the workforce has to constantly transition to better ways of performing existing functions. The other area where we have to focus on skills development are the leaders of our organizations and of our country. If we don't have enough fluency levels at that level, it makes it very difficult to modernize a business or an economy. And there's enough statistics coming out of academic institutions that highlights high fluency levels equals high organizational performance. And then finally, where I'll spend the rest of the time with you is on the development and skills development of micro entrepreneurs. These aren't the individuals that invent the technology, but these are the individuals that leverage existing technology to create some form of jobs for themselves and economic predictability. And there we need to teach them skills like understanding the basics of economics, understanding complex problem solving, resilience, the ability to articulate and position a value proposition. Those are skills that can be taught very quickly and very effectively. It doesn't require the 12-year cycle that we require for a schooling system. That's it for me.
Sure. Thank you so much. I was also so already engaged. I'm thinking I'm sitting in a lecture or a seminar, and I'm writing all these notes down. Thank you so much, Mr. Deo. You actually are assisting us in setting the tone for this discussion. Quite critical thoughts there. Workforce, skills, and economy. There is quite a dialectical relationship between the three. So we'll explore that further as we discuss. Can we have Dr. Makama Magaziwe?
Right. Thank you so much, Chair, for inviting me, and good afternoon, everyone. Such a pleasure to be with you today and discuss such an imperative topic about the future skills that is needed for our people. Just by the introduction, I am Magaziwe Makamba. I am also a research expert. I work at the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies under the 4IR PMO team. I'm also the board member for the ECDC as well. As the colleagues have already mentioned as well, the impact of the COVID-19 and the need of upskilling and reskilling our people to be aligned with this digital era. It is very imperative that now the COVID has shown us that we don't necessarily have to go to the offices. We don't necessarily have to be in Gauteng to work. What is important that I've taken out from this whole dilemma is that it is important to remain innovative. Because now with the 4IR era is presenting us with the opportunity where we can become innovative wherever we are. Now you can develop the app wherever you are that can actually eradicate the challenges that we have. So now really the future is really indeed in our hands. So now what is important also is to look at our people. What is it that people need? What skills do we really need? And also what 4IR skills that people can really align with and can be important to people in order to accelerate socio-economic development. So we need to look at that and also talk to our people where it's necessary, let's upskill, and where it's necessary, let's reskill, so that everyone is aligned and understand the impact of this. Because by the look of things, COVID is here to stay with us, and it's important for us to adjust. And as a method of adjusting, it's important to check what is it that we have at the moment and how do we build on what we have. So with the fourth industrial revolution that is here, we need to understand how can we make the technology work for us, not us working for technology. So it presents us an opportunity where we can build from what we have. So we have all the opportunity, and the good part that I like about what is really happening, as much as it's not a good thing, but the fact that now you don't really necessarily have to go to the university. You can study online, do whatever course that will upskill you and make sure that you are aligned with this fourth industrial revolution, and make sure that at least you understand the impact of what is happening, and you can upgrade yourself wherever you are to make sure that at least you play a part of generating the economy. I'll pause for there in a moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you. Also, quite important thoughts that you've relayed there, particularly on how do we deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, it's so easy to say, guys, let's move. We got to be innovative, but do we have the strength? People are so discouraged, so we need to see how we can, rechannel and change that. Can we have Professor Sibusiso Moyo, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Program Director and our Chairperson. I'm sorry, I think you can see me. I hope you can hear me as well.
Yes,
I'm having load shedding and I have got Telkom. So between the two, I hope I can just put my message across.
And it's quite traumatic.
Yes,
both the combination
that's our
of both.
reality.
Yes,
but
indeed.
thank you so much. Also, greetings to the panelists and also the audience. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I was introduced, so my name is Sibusiso Moyo, the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Innovation and Engagement at DUT, Durban University of Technology. So I come from the university sector, but I also work quite closely with NGOs, our local government, the national government as well as the higher education, network within South Africa. So my interest obviously is in supporting youth and also researchers in making sure that we are able, for instance, on the research side, to be able to make sure that we are doing research that has impact on other people's lives and also our communities. So we want to actually identify, what are the real issues in our community, in our society, and how can we contribute to finding those solutions. So for the purposes of this session today, which is on future-proofing our skills, and just finding interest in terms of what the challenges of the youth today face. And also comparing from where we started from, if you look at the youth of June, 1976, in terms of what they were protesting for, trying to make sure that they have, access to education and quality education, about the medium of the language that would be used for that, and to make sure that everybody has equal access in order to improve their lives. And looking at the youth today, what are our key challenges? So I think colleagues have already talked about, the employment rates and so forth. But for me, what is important, I always say to people, when you are choosing a skill or coming into higher education or trying to say to yourself, what will I do when I finish matric? It's always very important to ask yourself about what skill you can learn. So people, in most cases, you'll find that people come into university, they come into tertiary institutions in order to get a degree. But when you ask what skill do you want to get from that degree, it's not very clear. So we have people with PhDs, they are called Dr. X, Dr. Y, or even, people in academia. But if you ask what other skills do they have, usually it's just reading and, publishing, but not really a skill which you can say, I can use this skill to start up my business, to become an entrepreneur, to make money outside, your normal job where you just go to work and, fill in a few papers and get paid at the end of the month. So we are trying to change that mindset. And at DUT, what we're doing, for example, is we have programs where we are trying to get our youth to think beyond the box. So we try to introduce things like design thinking, trying to make them, think about, identify opportunities within their communities, which they can use to develop ideas which can help them. So one of the key areas that we have seen, and you'll probably agree with this if you look at some of the latest economic data in terms of areas which have potential for skills, you'll see that the agribusiness is a growing and emerging area. And it's an area where youth can make a lot of money as well as the creative art industry. So under agribusiness, what we do as a university is allow students from any field. You don't have to be a student who's studying agriculture, for example. We have, practical sessions where you can actually start up, your own small garden. You can grow your food or your harvest, and then you are able to have the value chain where we teach you the skills about business, how to start your business, financial skills, and also finding the relevant markets where you can sell those goods. But so from my side, it's just the issue around trying to make sure that, you know, when we talk about education, in most communities, you say that, well, education is linked to economic growth, but actually education without skills is very dangerous. And I think we've moved our communities and our society to a level where we all want our kids, or even if you speak to people, if you are very intelligent, people say, you know, do engineering or do medicine. Nobody says, you know, start a business. And if our kids choose to start a business, we collapse with so much depression and we feel sorry for them. So I think that our mentality is just beyond, you know, for us, it's not just changing the mindset of our youth to say, you know, what other opportunities are there, but it's just working together with the government, because also what we find, we were talking to a group of youth yesterday from, and this was arranged through our minister in the province within KZN. And most of them expressed the concern that even though government is investing a lot in developing the small, medium enterprises, they don't know about this information or how to access that information. There is a lot of investment if you have an idea, but the question is, where do you go? Where do you get this information? What help is there? If I've just finished matric, I can't get into a higher education sector, actually, then you really don't know where to start from. So I think we need to also have these platforms where we can share information with the youth, to try to help them also to access opportunities for training, to learn skills, and not just get a degree for the sake of getting a degree. And I know that working with a lot of people with PhDs, by the way, to date, who are not employed and they're looking for jobs, but they have a doctorate. What does that mean, you know, to have a doctorate and not be able to find a job? So that's my contribution for this part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Moyo. And I think just particularly that last point that you mentioned, we definitely need to engage on that, because it's something that is growing. People, cyber companies will tell you overqualified, people are overskilled, and we really need to find a solution towards how do we address such issues. But let me start with Mr. Adeo, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Hani. You know, Adeo, you mentioned the importance of, you know, the triangular relationship or effect between workforce skills and the economy. How can blue and white collar, you know, companies remain relevant? Like you mentioned, that they need to transition, they need to make sure that processes and systems, you know, are there so that we could have better performance. But how do you think they can remain relevant to, you know, the current workforce and the current skills acquisition that people should gain?
So I think that's a really good question, and yes, something to think about. Whether we have to accept that the global, we've got to keep the big companies in our economy globally competitive. You know, a mining operation, let's say a gold miner, might be, you know, operating in South Africa, but the price of gold is an internationally determined price. So we've got to make sure that our operations can operate at a level of efficiency to make sure that there's sufficient profit in the mining process. And what we find is that, you know, companies in similar sectors around the world, as they modernize, they become far more competitive and they become more attractive for investment. So what it suggests is that if for us to remain relevant in the various sectors, we need to remain globally competitive, which was my starting statement. The risk that the concern that gets surfaced is that when we think of globally, you know, remaining competitive through modernization or digitization, we correlate that immediately to job losses, which is not an unreasonable thought. However, if our businesses are not competitive, then the entire business becomes irrelevant, which would mean that the job losses are greater. So we've got to ensure, and again, as I mentioned, if you take a look at it at a macro level, if we transition properly, the impact on jobs would be positive. If you have the conversation at a granular level, comparing one job and the impact of a technology on it, then there's a good chance that that job would be eliminated. So the thing, going back to the starting point, is that we need to modernize businesses in order to ensure that they're globally competitive. That works on the assumption that that they would also expand the economic base, being able to employ more people or bring on the new kinds of jobs that don't exist at the moment. As part of the process of modernizing a business, one would define what is it that business needs to do in this digital economy. In order to achieve that output, what are the technologies that are necessary for the business to be proficient in? And then once we know what technologies and capabilities we need in the business in the to-be state, we can quickly understand what are the skills gaps that we have inside our organizations and put a process in place to start transitioning the workforce from where we are now to where we need to be in the future. Now, typically the comments that get thrown at that is that you can't transition the entire workforce. That's not entirely correct. Just because someone doesn't have a tertiary degree doesn't mean that they're unable to learn. It means that they were very unfortunate not to have those privileges. So we're seeing, big infrastructure companies, mining companies, train workforce to fulfill digital-like type jobs where they were previously doing manual jobs. The organizations that experience pain in the transition of the workforce, and we see it in the press, organizations lose, shedding people, etc., or losing competitiveness, to me is a symptom of organizations that haven't started transitioning soon enough. And so what happens is they get into a crisis situation, and then it's more about survival as opposed to a orchestrated transition into a competitive state. In summary, I think the key thing is that we all need to embrace our economies, and our respective businesses, whether you're a big business or a small business, needs to be competitive. As the world turns to technology to unlock new forms of innovation, new forms of productivity and efficiency and quality improvements and improvements in customer experience, if we don't adopt those changes, we become less attractive to customers. We become irrelevant. So we have to progress. And part of that progression is having the right skills in our business. And so we as businesses need to invest in transitioning the workforce across.
Absolutely.
I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly does. I think Mr. Khane just inferred from what Mr. Adeo has said, your experience with working with young people in the community and empowering them. I think my first question is, one, how do you access them, particularly those that are disadvantaged? Chances are there are quite a few students that come to your company saying we need help. And also for me, the big question is, whilst you locate these young people, how do you then draw a line between I'm here because I want to acquire the skills so that I can be better, or I'm here because I am desperate? Because for me, I've learned in life, never ever work with a desperate person, because the bottom line is money. It's a salary. It's I get paid at the end of the month. So quality doesn't matter. So in your programs, how do you locate the young people that truly have the drive? And how do you tell between I'm here because I want to acquire skill, or I'm here because I'm desperate?
No, I mean, it's something that has been proven over the time that when you're dealing with young people who are in the areas like the rural areas in the township, the keenness is a commitment that they have.
Yeah.
So that they have to put the skin on the game, in the sense that even if the funding part becomes a challenge, if they have a way of contributing towards their own studies, because I've seen that in terms of how they take probably issue of skills or education as much more important, because they know that the end result they are going to earn. They know the end result they will do something in terms of their life now. So it becomes easier, and also it assists even us as a organization, because they will demand more, because it's more like this thing of giving and people not getting it doesn't work, because there's no commitment that comes in now. So for us, it's been seen that around commitment now. And I think secondly, it's important storytelling. So the kind of the product that comes in, student that pass for us, it's important to share those stories, because it brings hope, it brings aspiration, it makes people able to see that I have to come to Silulu now. So part of that you could do through social media, you could do so local radios, you could do local newspapers, and work with the communities and say that the student came here from the matric, never know anything about computers. Now this student work in the call center in RTSA. It's key it's important. It's the same also entrepreneur. For some of them, they start their businesses. Those become an example. So you're creating that kind of role model because you're changing the mindset, you are changing the interest, you make the kind of like saying that a smaller things that can, so it's kind of you change, you shift the community now, because the system changed now, more than typical around education. Now we are saying that part of those success stories that we have, you make a noise about it. You make sure that the student, they come in. So you don't have a problem around, and it becomes even for us, 70% of the student that comes is a word of mouth because they care, because they talk about that. And I think that's what, I mean, it works so well when you're able to be in the community, understand the communities and work with the communities instead of coming in, I'm coming in with my model and then you have to. So those are kind of things that I kind of saying that key in the, I mean, in this kind of future, you need role modeling. People must aspire for someone. You need confidence. People must believe in themselves that they can do this thing. People must commit. They must put on the game instead of like we giving, because they have to. And then you provide a kind of a space for them to come in so that that space is beyond the skilling so they can on their own.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Sure. Very, very important what you mentioned about remodeling and also integrating the community within the business model of the organization. I think that's very important to tailor make things for communities or for our clients instead of saying, this is what it is, adapt or, you know, or live without. So thank you for mentioning that. Let me go to Antoinette. I mean, you mentioned the fact that, you know, you work with a lot of corporates under the training and coaching services. In your opinion, how can organizations improve their personal development plans? I mean, given the current climate of job loss and so forth, I think companies are either retaining high performers or are retaining people with a high skill set. But you know, bearing that in mind, how do we then ensure that organizations improve their personal development plans, particularly where they are people-centered or they should be people-centered?
I think a key thing about it is actually having conversations with employees about what success looks like for them, and therefore, and what you know their strengths are, what skills they bring to the party, so that when there aren't generally just job losses, there are generally restructures. That means some jobs go away, some new jobs form, some jobs change, and actually, you know, helping employees have a voice in all of that, so that if they are a fit for a new role, that transition can be made, just as Walter suggested, that they can actually be applying their skills in a new context. Or if that new opportunity doesn't exist, either because of the nature of the role or just because of numbers, they are at least helped to think about what it is that they want from work, and therefore what opportunities they may be able to find outside. So, you know, rather than being victims of a restructure and a change, actually seeing it just as a transition, so that they are, you know, that the company is supporting them to leave in a way. It's still not a nice situation, and no one wants to be the person that is at risk. But at least, you know, if the organization can help them think about what they bring to the party, and therefore what opportunities they can look for outside, and maybe even connect them to other opportunities for organizations that might be looking for their skill sets, then it's, you know, it's still empowering. You know, you can still empower people in that context. And for those people that are staying, again, I think it is about helping that transition, and not just in terms of the technical or job related skills, but also in terms of that psychological change. So there is a difference between change and transition. And change is a physical thing. So, you know, your job, you're now this job rather than that job. You know, you're now working at home rather than working in an office. That's change. Transition is a psychological thing. And that is what we mostly, I think all of us probably struggled with in the pandemic. You know, change was easy, right? I suddenly work from home, fine. Yeah, transition, oh, you know, I don't see anybody anymore. And, you know, I don't hear from anybody and I'm all on my own. And so I think we need to help people with that transition rather than just saying, okay, this is your new job and, you know, go on this training course and off you go.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'll be asking you the last question later on, just on that point. So please bear it in mind. Let me quickly go to Dr. Magaziwe, and then I'll go to Moyo, and then I know, Walter, you need to leave soon. So probably you can give us your final thoughts and sentiments just after these two, or just let me know how urgent it is, Mr. Adeyo. If you need to leave, you'll just tell me. Dr. Magaziwe, I just wanted to find out, I mean, you know, here we are as a third world country going into 4IR, which is a first world phenomena. As African countries, we've never thoroughly led any industrial revolution. We've been victims of industrial revolutions, and across even the first three. I don't want to just say victims, but guinea pigs. So, Dr. Magaziwe, where do we start with this 4IR? I mean, it's a big giant. Where do we start by biting it piece by piece? Like, take a child or a young person who's from the villages, or somebody who is at a kindergarten level. Where do we start? You know, based on all the challenges and stages of development that we've encountered, how do we even begin to digest the fourth industrial revolution? Okay, cool. I think, sorry, before you come in there, Dr. Magaziwe, may I just allow Mr. Adeyo just to give his final sentiments, because he needs to drop off shortly, and then you'll come in. Mr. Adeyo?
Thank you very much, and I apologize for interruption. So a couple of things, just maybe building on to you as an exit note.
Yeah.
The 4IR is not a third world, first world construct, in my opinion. This is about an opportunity. We've got to embrace it to ensure that we're in the game globally, from a global perspective. The other dynamic that we have is that in South Africa, we've got components of third world metrics, but we've got also first world, competitive businesses. And so what I think we've got this ability, we've got perhaps an advantage that we need to leverage to unlock as many dividends as possible from this change. We've got companies that are leading in what they do. We've got big social challenges, specifically around education and employment, that we need to address. What we need to probably also embrace is that employment through formal programs is going to be difficult. And I do think we need to also, and I think it was Professor Moyo that suggested that, entrepreneurship is probably the new form of employment. Self-employment is the new form of employment. But in order to do that, we've also got to make sure that we've got the processes and support structures in place to drive entrepreneurship. It is incredibly difficult to move from a corporate role to become an entrepreneur. Products and services and support structures are just not geared for the small and medium-sized enterprise. And if you take a look at successful economies in Europe, you take a look at the British economy, for example, the SMME sector employs a bulk of the population. So I read a stat earlier this week that the average employment, more than 50% of employment in the United Kingdom are from companies that employ less than 10 people. So I think there's a huge opportunity to unlock value there, but at the same time, we've got to make sure that our big organizations, our globally competitive organizations, are allowed to remain globally competitive, and they've got to operate at the highest level of performance and efficiencies. And for that, they need the right skills, and they need to be developing skills inside their organization to ensure their competitiveness. I hope that resonates with the audience and with you as well.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to release
very much.
Mr. Walter Adeu. Thank you so much for your contributions, and truly that was a profound exit. Now we're going to stay with the problems and finding the solutions. Thank you, Walter.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you. Dr. Magaziwa, can you come in there just on the previous question and building up from what Mr. Adeu has just relayed?
Thank you so much, Thabang. It is indeed just such a big elephant to dissect. And we need to ask ourselves, do we also want to be left behind in this era as well, in this revolution as well, or do we want to embrace it and try to make sure we are also making an impact in the global economy? So with the 4IR, looking at it and also looking at the benefit that it actually gets and also it provides to our people, we need to start looking on how can we use the 4IR in order to accelerate our socio-economic development. How can we use 4IR in order to eliminate inequality, unemployment in our country? We are the country that is full of a lot of unemployed young people. So now we need to check with what we have and the skills that we have. How do we use the 4IR in order to eliminate the inequality? Nowadays, as I have mentioned earlier, that we can use the technology, and technology, it is an equalizer. Now we have an ability to develop whatever applications wherever we are, depending on the problems that we have. So now it's no longer that the men need to be up front in order for us to develop those things. It's more about our innovations. It's more about our ideas and our enthusiasm on the problems that we have and how do we actually derive the solutions from that. So now if we look at the 4IR and also looking at the pandemic itself, we need to understand where we are, that this is where we are, and what skills do we have, what problems do we have, and how can we use the technology to eradicate those problems that we have. Of course, we would need the human nature in there, and also would need to create an awareness in our people to understand what is 4IR, first of all, and also understanding, once they get to understand what is 4IR and understanding the benefit of the 4IR, of using the 4IR, and understanding as well of the impact that it has. Because now when you look at Thabang and our people in the society, when you talk about 4IR, immediately what comes to their mind is that this is the revolution that is here to take away our jobs, of which is totally different thing. Now they're looking at the negative side, but not looking at the productivity that can be generated by the machines, and also looking at the impact of people as well. We can actually make a lot of impact and also accelerate the socio-economic development. We just need an understanding and learn to embrace this revolution and understand what can we learn from it, and also how can we use technology in order to accelerate the economy, and how can we make sure that technology works for us. Because now this is a time where we are in control, where we say we want to do programming, we want to actually do the robots. Now you have seen in the mining sector, I'm just going to make just an example that came in my mind, that a lot of people, they're having issues in there. And now when you can use the robots to make sure that in the areas where people are having high risk, we use robots in that, and look at the productivity that we can get, and also in the safety of our people while we're using those robots, and make sure the productivity as well on that regard. You'll also look at the agriculture sector as well, where now we can use drones for the security, for spraying, and so many more things that we can do. So there is so much we can do in this. It's just that we need to start embracing it and start understanding the benefit that it has on our society, and also understand what skills do we need and how can we align ourselves, especially in terms of the unemployment and also in the inequality as well. We need to check what skills that is really relevant and how can we align ourselves with the digital era, because we don't want to be the nation that is not involved in these revolutions. They all come in and go out without us taking part. And also we need also to ask ourselves the question that if we all the time in all this revolution, we don't partake, and then who will want to invest in the country that is provided with opportunities, but instead they sit back, say, no, we really are not sure where to start. We need to start wherever we are. And then we make sure that as long as we're making a difference, and as long as we're making actually the impact in our society and make our youth be part of this, get involved, and make sure that we accelerate our economic, socio-economic development. I'll pause for there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doc. And I think Professor Moyo, you can come in here just building on to what Mama Kamba has said. I like what you mentioned, that how do we use the fourth industrial revolution to eliminate inequality? And I think it's the same force that must be used in terms of business to address social issues. So maybe Dr. Moyo, in your capacity and in your experience with working with young people, and based on what Volta said, that entrepreneurship is the new form of employment, how do you think we can encourage young people to be social entrepreneurs, to be pioneers of society, to say, don't just develop or start a business because you want to drive a Golf GTI, but let's focus on the bigger picture. And perhaps you can just tell us some of the incentives that the university is doing to aid in that. Dr. Moyo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Thabang, for that. And thank you to also the comments already made by my colleagues, both Volta and also Dr. Makamba as well. So I'll just add to that. I think the first place to start when we talk about entrepreneurship, most people think entrepreneurship by definition is like starting a business and making money, right? But I also see it broader than that, that it first starts with our values, right? You have to have a value system. And if we don't have that, we will really never have an environment where we are all able to thrive and flourish. So the value system is important. And when I talk about values, it's the idea that, one has to really strive for excellence, strive for respect, integrity in what we do, and also working hard. And from that point, the values then help us as well in terms of how we relate to others, because becoming an entrepreneur is not something you do on your own. You have to care about something. You have to look around you and be able to identify opportunities, able to identify issues in society where you can make a contribution, so that when you come up with whatever solution, whether it's going to be a service, a product, or something which can deal with solving a health problem, for example, it could be around COVID-19, or whatever it is, that you first start off from a premise where you care about something, and then you want to help to solve that problem. And from that, of course, whatever product you come up with, you can actually then, you can sell your products. I mean, you can become rich from them, but it's always important to have that basic value, the care for society that we come from, and also the need for us to want to, to be able to innovate in order to find solutions in terms of that. But also when it comes to 4IR, just adding to what my colleagues said already, the digital platform, it's now in some countries, well, it's also moved to, some people refer to it as 5IR or whatever it is. But in any case, when we talk about 4IR, we are also talking about digitization and automation. So the opportunities that brings, yes, technology brings opportunities for all of us. So it means I can be a kid in a rural area, but I can have access to the same educational platforms, the same information with anyone else globally, whether they're at Harvard or the UK or whichever platform. So I think that for our youth today, which most of us probably didn't have during our time, is the opportunity to have this global knowledge of the challenges, not just in our area where we come from, but also globally, so that when we're looking at our products and the market reach, it's not just the market that is confined to, say, KZN or Cape Town or Gauteng. It is beyond our borders, the African continent, and also globally. So I think that is important for us to be able to, as entrepreneurs, to have skills which first of all are based on our values, and then also being able to recognize opportunities, how we access those opportunities, and the ability to collaborate beyond just our local network. Some of the key issues, remember, when we talk about entrepreneurship, even though I know the university in our case, and it's not just our universities, all universities belong to what we call Universities South Africa. We have a network where all the 26 public universities belong to. Through that, we have an entrepreneurial development in higher education program. So all universities are doing something in this area. But I know that at our university, for example, we actually fund small student enterprises after the students have pitched and also test their ideas, so that we make sure we have a sustainable route. I like what someone mentioned, and I don't know if it was Antoinette or someone else who mentioned the idea that, this idea of giving I think maybe it was Luvuyo. You see, the idea of just giving money and saying, here's the money, do something. I think that is a bad practice, because what we want to embed is the idea that actually nothing is for free. If we are going to invest in your business, we expect you to pay back so that we can help others as well, so that you create a sustainable platform. Some of the problems we face as a country are because of this idea that things can be given for free. And so, you find people don't want to give back for what they can, what they've been given, because we also want, there are other youth coming up. Who's going to look after them if we use all the resources and we don't plow in anything ourselves? So that idea of giving to help others, I think, is also important. I don't know, Thabang, can I stop there, or you want me to continue?
Yeah, no, please stop there, because our time is actually out.
I saw that.
So I'm going to ask
I can
everybody.
talk for hours. Thank you.
And there's nothing wrong. It is a passion project of yours, and it's quite a critical topic. I think 1 hour will never be enough, but thank you so much for those inputs. They're well noted. I think let's have our closing remarks. Let me allow Mr. Hani Luvuyo just give your closing remarks, and perhaps add how young people can reach you, and also just your final thoughts on the matter. And then I will go to Antoinette Magaziwe, and then we will conclude with you, Dr. Moiso. Luvuyo, over to you.
I mean, you've been amazing. I mean, it's been a great session, and I really enjoy kind of like the engagement. I think one thing which is missing that probably we could do better as a country is a collaboration. University, private sector, and then with them kind of local entrepreneur or NGOs. Now, I think there's a kind of part of this discussion, we can take it beyond that, so make sure that there's a practical way that we can. I think together we can make much more impact instead of working our own ways in terms of like in our silos. I think that's how even technology can allow us to do that, in terms of like to take our work and make sure that. And secondly, especially around entrepreneurship, and I kind of hear more that there's much to talk about entrepreneurship, and I think that from an Africa context, what will make us and what will make us compete globally, it's a social entrepreneur. We've got so much skills that we have that can be addressed through social entrepreneur, that can be able to be kind of solution around the world that we can, because we are in a kind of space where we're dealing with much more problems, and those problems can be opportunities, and that kind of becomes like a mindset that we can all look at, and enables that many young people see that unemployment of 6% as an opportunity that can be addressed, but it cannot address with the lens of pure entrepreneur. It has to have impact in the society, in the community. That's how I think, we can change, and that's why the future skills can be once we address those kind of things. Now, thank you so much for an awesome session.
Thank you so much, Luvuyo. We truly, truly appreciate your inputs, and definitely we will be in touch. Thank you so much. Over to you, Antoinette, and then we'll have Dr. Magaziwe.
Thank you. I have enjoyed this session so much and learned a lot. One thing I've become very aware of is that I do not know the specifics of South Africa or Africa. I am a Brit living in the UK, working internationally, but I don't know the specifics of South Africa. So I've been thinking about how what I know relates to your situation, and the fact is human beings are human beings.
Sure.
And I would say that my main focus really is on how do we empower individuals to make and cope with change. And one of the things that I think is really important is that when you empower people, you're shining a light on the resources they have that will help them make progress. Now, we live in a world of problems and challenges, and we can get so focused on those problems and challenges that they seem insurmountable. And then people find it very hard to see the resources available to them that will help them make progress. So I encourage, everybody as an individual, as a parent, as a colleague, as a member of a community, as well as the institutions, to help people identify the resources available to them. Those might be internal, And it doesn't matter how many qualifications a person has, they still have the values that Professor Moyo mentioned. They have the drivers, they have skills, and they have behaviors that will help them. And they also have resources outside of themselves in terms of support networks, maybe, you know, government resources, funding, education resources, whatever there might be. So yeah, those are my thoughts. And there is only one Antoinette Oglethorpe, so if you'd like to connect with me, you will easily find me on LinkedIn and on Google, and very happy to connect.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. And there is only one, hey. That's how unique we are in this world. But what you said is so empowering to say, part of empowering people is to teach them to identify what they have. That's a form of light. And I think that is so profound. And I think we need to learn to do that as individuals, to say, whether we are employed or unemployed or going through circumstances, there is something around you that could essentially propel you and take you out. So thank you very much for those sentiments. Thank you. Dr. Magaziwe, your final remarks?
Antoinette has said it all.
It really has, eh?
It is indeed, Thabang. This was a very informative session. I really enjoyed it. It actually literally feels like 15 to 30 minutes instead of an hour. I feel like I hope it was at least 1 hour and a half, because I was looking more to learn more about the things that we have discussed. Thank you so much. All I can say is that we need to start looking at our problems, or the problems that we have, and start looking at what we have also in our hands in terms of the technology, and start understanding what can we do with what we have in order to eradicate the problems that we have. Because in a nutshell, what we have and the technologies that we have that is at our disposal really can eradicate the challenges that we have. We really need to start looking around at the power of technology and understand how can we use it to actually eradicate those issues that we have, and learn more about the technology, and also about the power of technology, and what can we use with what we have, and the impact that it has in our economy. With that being said, thank you so much, Thabang. I am looking forward to hear from our colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Magaziwe. Truly informative there, particularly with 4IR, and we're so glad that regionally, Eastern Cape is doing a lot of work to ensure that, and all the best to you. Thank you. Dr. Moyo, please close for us. I think you are now, wrap it up for us, bring it home.
Yes, Thabang, and also Antoinette from the UK. I can try to bring the UK and South Africa together. Yes. So thank you so much for all the comments. I really don't have to say much, but really to thank you for this session. It was very informative. I really enjoyed the engagement. But just to say from my side that we have talked quite a bit. So from my side, it's just to say there are many opportunities around us, and collaboration is the key. Being skilled, making sure that our youth and get the relevant skills that are needed. That also as business, education sector, civil society, that we come together, we collaborate to make sure we create these platforms where people can flourish. And then also, I just want to end with a book which I think I should recommend for reading. It's called The Values Compass by, I think it's Dr. Mandip Ray. And it talks about what 101 countries teach us about purpose, life, and leadership. Because I did focus a lot on this idea that, the value system we have is important, and the support we get, issues around network and also the values, is so important for us to succeed in every way in our lives. The digital platform provides opportunities, but always look out around you. What is it that you can do to solve a particular problem, to help the people around you, to help the community around you, because that gives us a way, to be able to transform our lives, whether it's in the workplace. Yes, it is sad to get laid off, really. You don't want to be amongst that population that gets laid off. But I think that as a business, and also as companies and, civil society, we should really work together to make sure that our workforce is also being given an opportunity to be entrepreneurial, to be able to consult, to be able to give services, rather than just working for the salary. And then one day when things change, then one has no options, you know, you feel useless and as if you can't contribute to anything. So I really want to thank you for this platform, and I thank you also for the panelists. I look forward, I think I'll Google some of them and follow up with them. But thank you so much, Thabang. I think this was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moyo, and thank you to all of you, or both of you. You guys are, I think you're the only ones that are here now, but thank you so much for staying with us, and all the best for your future endeavors, and we'll certainly look out for you. Please, when we call again, please do come back, because there's still a lot to chat about, and all the best for the future, as mentioned earlier. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the panel discussion on future-proofing skills. Sure. I am deeply challenged. Yeah, I'm deeply challenged. I think we have every right to complain about issues and so forth. However, with the right to complain, we also have a responsibility to adapt, to change, to stand up and really find solutions towards the problems that currently exist within the marketplace. And just on a final note, what Antoinette was saying, just to say, empowering is about helping people find the resources within themselves and around them. Just take somebody, you know, carry them, walk with them, and let's just do it. Let's not be a generation or people that is always complacent and used to the inequalities and all the, you know, issues that are around us. Let's actually teach ourselves to acquire problem-solving skills, teach ourselves to design methods and policies and initiatives that could get us into a better positioning as a country and as a continent. Thank you very much to our panel, and we will now conclude on the final panel of the day right after this.